Welcome back to The Devil in Detail. I'm Eli.
I'm Ben. It's our Grendel Reread Comic Book Podcast. Very special episode today.
Huge. Big old episode 42. This one is a super special one for everyone out there and really for us indeed. We've got some amazing guests. We've got the entire creative team behind Devil Child. We've got Matt Wagner, Diana Schutz, Tim Sale, and Teddy Kristiansen all the way from Denmark. Oh my God, this is going to be huge. They're going to be here so soon, Ben. How do you feel, man?
I feel good. I'm really excited. I've only met Matt virtually and all that, and I'm sitting here with like my 1997 Long Halloween hardcover that I remember my grandfather buying for me when I was a boy.
Nice.
And I can't wait to pick Teddy Kristiansen's brain about painting and airbrushing and all kinds of wild stuff.
Yeah.
Before we get into that,
yeah.
What did you do this week, Eli?
Just again, working on comics. Image Grand Design is very close to doing something, and we'll let you know more about that very soon. The Ween Zine is also so near completion. Like I'm at 95% right now. I'm just like dotting the T's, crossing the I's, and just getting the last little things ready. So I mean, I'm psyched. I'm so ready to like get on to the next project and maybe even start some Monkey Line or start doing like my own book again. So yeah. It'll be nice to get back to like working on something for me. My first Cosmic Lion Productions first publishing contract was written, given to the artist, the writer, and that writer is now taking it to their lawyers. So this is the first time that I wrote a contract and a lawyer's looking at it. So that is super cool. Thank you again for hooking me up with Steele Philippek. Shout out. Super cool. So that's an honor and just a milestone in itself. What about you, Ben?
Leveling up,
man?
That's
good.
Dude. I'm good. We as February approaches, so too does a deadline for Mystic Connecticut, and I have 90 penciled pages, 90 completed pencil pages, and a handful more to do, and then there's a little bit more that the writers need to put together that will get done at a later date. But I'm deep into the batch of pages that were laid out rather elaborately. So I'm moving through tightening up the pencil spreads in about 2 hours a piece. So in the last week, I've been polishing off 5-6 pages in a day. Amazing. And I'm going pretty hard. I definitely feel like there's certain cartooning, shorthand, anatomical illustration stuff that's leveling up. I feel like my hands have gotten a lot better, whether I'm trying to add detail to them or kind of get things, really wide shots of figures in silhouettes. So I'm quite happy with that, but I'm also excited to move on to other projects. March is going to be, I got to work on Steele Philippek's Arcane, which I've been digitally duotoning. And I've got Oh Fuck Why issue 2. There's some big top secret news on Oh Fuck Why that just percolated in the last week, so that's really exciting. And then there's a webtoon strip which I edit called Gumshoe City, and you can find it on Webtoons.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah, it's by Winston Gambro, and it's like a hard-boiled comedy about like a city that is the noir practically seeps from every pavement stone.
Oh, nice. So do you like working in the webtoon kind of format, which is kind of like downwards?
I have nothing to do with it.
Oh yeah, you just read it to make sure it's.
I edited the first volume maybe a year ago and honestly forgot about it. Yeah. And then got an email from the guy and oh, this is funny. It was like I was sending edits as notes, as like comments on a Google Doc.
Yeah.
And as he was going through my notes, he would like close out the comment when he would resolve it by hitting the ignore button. And so I just got like 65 like emails that like my comment was ignored. And I never heard from the guy. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
geez.
gee.
And then he wrote me again. He goes, all right, I got volume 2. I'd love you. He goes, you gave this one note that really opened up the story and we'd love to have you back. I was like, hey, great. So
That's awesome.
it's funny because like that, that role is really, you get to like swing yourself around, Mr. Comics expert, Mr. Storybreaker or whatever, without breaking your back over a board or an iPad. When I'm toning Steele's book, it's very meditative because I don't have to think about anything beyond mood and tone, and I don't have to think about the mechanical storytelling. And then when I'm doing Mystic Connecticut, it's like I'm gonna not only be doing the line art but also coloring and lettering the thing too. And with Oh Fuck Why, I sort of like art direct the letterer and colorist, so it's all
multi-talented, different shades of Ben in each book.
Shades of labor.
50 Shades of Ben.
Right.
I'd read that.
One of my absolute pet peeves when it comes to like podcasts that rope in big guests is when the hosts of the hosts kind of like hold people hostage in waiting rooms or sort of talk about their own podcast as if it is an entity on par with the
original work.
So you should know, listeners, that we're recording this far ahead of the scheduled time that our 4 storied and talented guests are arriving. It's like it's just like I roll my eyes every time I see it happen.
Oh man, that's too funny.
What else did you watch, read, or consume anything cool this week?
Yeah, I did. Actually got my subscription back for Mad.
Is Mad back?
Well, they do 6 issues a year, and they're like specials. Like this one is the Spy vs. Spy, like espionage edition. So that's been sweet.
Nice.
I got to honestly, my brother got me this book. It's amazing. It's called Sun Ra's Chicago. It's a very scholarly book about Sun Ra and his quest around Chicago. Oh yeah, I guess I told you about this stuff last week.
I had to draw some Afrofuturism inspired stuff.
Nice.
And in my Google searching, there were some great Sun Ra pics, and like I was like, oh, I never thought to do a headdress with this crazy bendy wire that holds your gemstone.
Nice. Yes.
So I thought a little about Sun Ra this week.
Yeah, that's a really interesting part of the book too, is about the Afrofuturism that he kind of like not only started but kind of took to a whole new level. They had a whole group. I can't remember what it's called right now, but super cool reading there. WandaVision, obviously,
like an art collective, like a Sun Ra.
Exactly, like an Afrofuturism art collective. Yeah,
and they were 40, 50 years ahead of their time.
Oh my god, yeah, this was like in early 60s.
Oh wow, I thought I was even.
Well, this is even in the late 50s. It's saying, yeah.
And they were doing that.
Oh yeah, they formed El Saturn, a registered business corporation that supported various projects from producing records and designing objects to finding local gigs for Sun Ra and the orchestra.
Space is the place.
Equal parts music collective, small business, community organization, and cultural laboratory.
Unbelievable.
So cool.
How's WandaVision?
Oh, it's awesome. I started watching it last night. I stayed up late and the whiskey didn't allow me to finish it. So I'll probably watch it again this morning.
Oh, there's a new one.
There's a new one
that
came out at midnight. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm a big Catherine Hahn mark.
Oh my God.
I liked her a lot in
kills it this app.
Yeah.
The new app. God.
I liked her a lot in she's in Transparent as Rabbi Raquel.
Oh yeah.
She's very good.
Hey, we were talking about Anchorman. Her whole thing started, she had like one line in Anchorman that blew her. Like her delivery of this one line like destroyed it. What was it? She was, hey, well, never or something like that. Like destroyed her. Like one line gave her like her whole comedy career. It seemed like
she's very good. So WandaVision has been good. Do you remember the article that was circulating? Like, oh, WandaVision isn't too slow. You just forgot how to watch TV.
Yeah.
I did think that the first 2 episodes were very slow because when I think back on 50 sitcoms, they are actually like I Love Lucy is funny.
Yeah.
And entertaining.
Dick
and
Van Dyke too, for sure.
Yeah. And like those, like, that shit was painful.
They tell you why. They give you the explanation in this.
Yeah,
new
we had to numb everyone's brain.
Well, yeah, and they think more about the future, like of people watching it, like binging it later,
Sure. Oh,
So
okay.
like at that
It
point,
won't be
when
slow
someone
then.
right, when someone's able to watch like 3 or 4,
Yeah.
and I think
I mean,
they were
because it
like,
picks
these
up
are
so
slow,
quickly.
right?
Yeah.
And they released those first 2 episodes like first off, like together, so that you could binge them and get them out of the way, and then get on to the like power. But
Are you a huge MCU mark? Have you been there since day one?
yeah. Well, I have a whole other podcast with Manus Kenneth Whippet that's basically all comics
Loving
and
it.
MCU talk. Yeah.
Loving it.
The end of our theme song is "We love the MCU. We love
that's
it."
right. Very cool.
All
And
right,
then
but let's
oh yeah.
yeah, we don't want to go
We
off
could
too
talk
long.
all day. We just send texts back and forth on this stuff.
Yeah, all right. So we're gonna go to the theme, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna have the illustrious, the elusive, the amazing guests and creative team of Devil Child.
Hey.
Let's take it to the theme.
Yeah. Vivat Grendel.
It's like the devil is my best friend. On the roads with the pen to the fork end, or till time end. Like Orion, Jupiter, my kin, bloodline private. We control the whole shit. The wolf won't beef, then we feast off the rip. Behold the devil in detail. Behold the devil in detail.
All right, welcome back to The Devil in Detail. We have our very esteemed panel of artists here, and writers and editors and everything in between. So welcome Teddy Kristiansen, Tim Sale, Matt Wagner, and Diana Schutz. Welcome everyone. So honored to have you all here.
I feel like I have a cot outside the door at this point.
It's amazing. It's so awesome, man. You're the third host, which is amazing. The creator of all things that we love. Well, it's good to have everyone here. Diana, it's nice to see that we both have Mobius on our walls behind us.
Yeah, of course. One of the few, when we moved in here a couple of years ago, I had a lot of art unframed with the idea that at some point in the next 10 years or so, it will either get sold if I'm broke, or more to the point, I hope it'll get donated to the Billy Ireland Museum so that other people can enjoy it too. But Mobius stayed on the wall. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to do this, but if you can, that stayed on the wall.
I'd forgotten. I remember the cover, obviously, but I'd forgotten that it was a panel too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty big.
It's well, actually, no.
It's a cover.
Comic size.
No, not
like
really.
17, something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
That's so cool.
But that's you can't tell from her just holding that up there. That's I've done various times through my career paintings where I paint on black poster board. So that was paint applied to a black base, a black poster board base. The various Batman Grendel covers are rendered in the same fashion.
And remind me, Matt and Tim, because didn't Tim, you did the preliminary pencil sketch?
Tim penciled them and I rendered them in paint. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Similar to what Teddy and I did on Teddy's run on Four Devils One Hell for Grendel Tales.
Yeah.
Often talked about as Ben and I's one of our favorite Grendel Tales.
Oh wow, thank you.
It's so good.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've read it many times.
That black poster board approach really lends itself to the matte finish on the floppy.
Very much so, and I drew inspiration for it. I've talked to you guys about this before, about a favorite artist of mine, a movie poster illustrator from the early part of the 20th century, Battista Madalena, who often painted on that. He was hired to do original poster illustrations for George Eastman's giant movie house in I forget where, upstate New York. and he had to work very fast, and he painted on poster board, very often on black, and utilizing very big, bold images and very bright, vibrant colors. And I did some of that myself, inspired by him.
They throw a lot of that shit away.
Yeah.
They
That's a
rescued
famous
it?
story that he was on his way home one evening, and he walked behind the theater, and here was a whole bunch of his posters in the dumpster, and it was raining.
Oh,
He managed to save a lot of them, but some
There
of
was a
them
book,
just
too, right?
ruined, yeah.
was there a book of the collection?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think you showed that to me. Yeah.
Yep. Sitting right over across my studio there.
What
Now,
do
one
you
of the-
paint with, Matt? Do you paint with the gouache or acrylics?
Those were acrylics, yeah. But watered down quite a bit to where they behave almost like gouache on that kind of surface.
Yeah, they look great.
But then they're they harden up and they're permanent. They won't smear.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So let's start kind of at the beginning. We're talking about Devil Child here, which is what you all worked on together. Now, it is a very personal story. It is a very intense story about, as Ben and I have been going through and rereading Grendel, for me, I found this new interest in Stacy as a character. And she really struck me this time more so on my first read through. I was a lot younger. I was probably more focused on Hunter. And so, Diana, I'm interested.
How young were you when you first read that?
Not too young, probably in my early 20s.
All right. Yeah, because
we
it's a
love
little.
the young one's souls. Believe
Yeah.
me.
Not too young, not too young. Now, so Diana, this is the story that you wrote, and this is the only, 2-page or 2-issue comic book story that you've wrote. So it's a very personal story. Now, did you decide to tell this story through Stacy, or how did that come to you, and how did this story come out?
Well, Eli, it's I'm not a writer at all, and
You can't tell from this book because it's amazing.
But writers, I think, constantly have stories kind of germinating in the back of their heads. They always have something to tell. I do not.
Not all writers.
Not all writers.
Well, you're a great writer.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people like Matt who just can't stop the shit coming in, but, and thank God there are people like that, but it doesn't mean you're not a writer.
Well, yeah, then let
That's
me
my opinion.
qualify
Nobody
by
else can
saying
do
a professional writer. I mean, someone who has to do this every single day,
Yes.
has to be kind of there,
It's a
has
different
to,
animal.
yeah. And I never really felt that way. When you asked me to write a story for solo, I was, it was, there was nothing sort of conveniently available there for me to grab. I really, really had to work at it. It's not kind of my vocation. So this was just, it was as if something existed outside me and grabbed me and sort of grabbed me around the throat and forced me to write it. I think it started out with Christine. It started quite early in the early 90s, and it was just something that wouldn't let go. It was the relationship between Christine and Stacy that interested me. And of course, at that point, I'd been living with Grendel every day since the middle 80s, having started working with Matt on Devil by the Deed when those first showed up as backups in Mage. So Grendel, I was living and breathing Grendel anyways. And this story was there outside of me, and it just felt like it needed to be told somehow. I was a slave to it.
Wow. I will say a lot of writers it's not that way with every one of my projects, but of course, you know, almost every writer has a personal project like that. For me, it's Mage, where you feel like the story's writing you. You know, you don't feel much in control. You feel like you're bobbled along on the river of this story, just like the reader would be eventually. And you know, I can't do that with every project I do, but of course, you know, on Mage, it's very you know, it's very Zen journey-ish. You know, it helps you realize and unveil things about yourself that you might not have been able to vocalize otherwise. You know.
And you had mentioned that the story took kind of some time to come out. Like it started in the early 90s, but then didn't come out till 99. What was that journey like to kind of to gestate in this writing?
Frustrating.
Yeah.
I wrote it, I checked the dates last night, and I wrote it originally in 93. And I wrote it for Tim to draw. Tim had just come off Billy 99 the year before, and Tim and I had worked together on a one-page benefit comic a couple of years prior to that.
Yeah.
What was that?
It was something called Food for Thought. It was the anthology put together by a woman whose name I'm forgetting, who was active in comics in the 90s, an editor, Midwestern editor, and it was a PETA benefit book. So, and in fact, as I mentioned to Eli in a message last night, doing the research for that one pager is what led me to become a vegetarian, because having learned about how animals were sort of processed to die, it just became very difficult after that to eat them. So that was the first thing that Tim and I worked on together, a freebie, and I knew from the start that Devil Child would be his to draw. And of course you were cool with that, so.
Yeah, I don't think I knew, or in any case, I don't remember knowing that that I was your only choice or whatever. But and there isn't a lot of connection between a PETA story and Devil Child.
No.
Some maybe, but
It was bleeding.
But well, you go on, and I'll talk more.
Well, yeah, no, you go ahead. I mean, I can't really remember. It was 30 years ago. I just know that in my head, it was absolutely you know, and it's funny. I mean, the very few things I have written at all have all been drawn by the three artists in the room here. Of course, Tim and Teddy, we worked on that Harlan Ellison adaptation. And Matt, I'm thinking of that one pager for Usagi years ago.
You also did that one pager that Bernie drew about your hair.
Right. Oh, yes, that's right. In which you starred.
Oh, in which I get the punchline, baby.
Diana, you coming in as a writer is a bit of a role reversal. We noticed, Matt, that you're credited as editor on this project, so the tables kind of turned. But we were all curious about that and that experience, but also about other like Grendel Tale projects, like Four Devils, One Hell, where Steve comes in and Diana's the editor. Matt, what's your role there as kind of like captain of the ship, or what?
Well, I will say on Devil Child, my credit as editor is an honorary title at best. You know, it was more just story coach, I guess would be the best description. You know, no way I'm gonna check Dai's spelling or any shit like that. You know?
But you did. I mean, you went through each script. I saved. You know, I have like a bunch of file folders of all that stuff, hard copy, no less. And I have copies of your edits on those scripts where you went in and commented ask me to expand certain things or pull back here, or you
I
like
remember
the line.
I remember there was a first version too that was completely wrong direction. Tell that story.
Yeah, so this was originally intended to be a 3-issue thing, and the first issue was going to be a recap of Devil by the Deed, basically, but through the perspective of Stacy. And so I wrote it, and it was the first comics issue that I had written whole cloth by myself, not an adaptation, not just a simple one-pager. And I sent it to Tim and to Matt to read. And yeah, quite a bit of time went by, as I recall. And then I got a call from Matt asking me to come over to the house. And when I got there, my sister was suspiciously not there. And that their house is kind of like my second home. I walk in, I go to the fridge, I pour myself a glass of wine, whatever. I feel very comfortable there. But I walked in, and Matt had a glass of wine ready for me and put it into my hands. And I knew something was up. And sure enough, they both Matt and Tim hated that first script. And
I have no memory of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but you did.
Okay.
And so, Matt and I talked about it that evening. I don't think it was a very long talk. I was crushed, of course. I thought, oh no, I can't even do this. It's just not going to happen. The story that I really, really want to tell, I'm failing at it. So I left that night, and it was like, well, here's the choice. You slit your wrists, or you start over, basically. And so I threw out that script. I think I saved a few lines here and there, but
yeah. let me jump in here and point out that what I told you was, no, this isn't the story you want to tell. You're just retelling my story.
Right.
Forget that shit. Go with the stuff you want to tell, which is the stuff that I didn't tell.
Yeah.
There's no need to repeat all the scenes that we already saw in Devil by the Deed. We already saw that,
Yeah. And I reread that script last night, and right from the get-go, right from page 1, it is really pretty awful.
I remember that clearly. But.
So it was definitely a good
call. Let me also add here. I think Eli and Ben, I told this on a previous episode, but in a sense, I was just returning the favor, because when I started to do Batman Grendel, I had similarly gone down a very wrong path, and Di had the gumption to come to me and say, "No, this sucks, man. You're just doing it all wrong. You should do it like this instead." And all of a sudden, boing, a light went off, and it all worked, But sometimes you get a little too close to something. You need somebody to say, "Hey, no, that's the wrong approach."
I will say,
Diana, was it because you were trying to do what you thought Matt was looking for? He's going to like this, so I'm doing this.
I think she was trying to do what she thought Matt's readers would want.
Yeah, that's actually it. I thought that we would have to kind of sort of set the scene for everyone. And as Matt rightly pointed out, if they're coming into Grendel, they already know about this, and there's no need to retell that story.
That's always been the great thing about. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Teddy.
That's always been the great thing about Grendel. Was this never knowing what you were going to get. I love that when I started reading. Like knew each storyline, both art-wise and story-wise, was not expected, and that's what I really enjoyed about it.
So Teddy, what is it like for you on Black, White, and Red to tell very, very early Eddie stories? If you don't know what you're going to get, but
I forgot you did one of those. That's right, and a really, really young, evil Eddie. Yeah.
Well, that was just for me a chance to be part of making something that Matt had been working on for such a long time. I enjoyed every stint of that.
Well, and Teddy, in keeping with what you just said there, that story you did looked nothing like Four Devils One Hell. So
Right.
you were continuing the aesthetic that makes Grendel special. So
And which one came first? Did
Four Devils.
Four Devils?
Yeah. Yeah. Four Devils, and then Sandman Midnight Theater followed that, right, Teddy?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But that's always been the key. I remember I read at one point an Austrian author called Robert Musil. He wrote A Man Without Qualities.
Right.
He apparently had said at one point that never give the reader what they want because they already know this. Mm-hmm. So I was like, so never repeat what you have been doing because what's the point?
Yeah.
It's the same as
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and similarly, I've always had the approach that, my first audience is myself. I have to do something that's going to interest me, because if it doesn't interest me, it's not going to interest other readers,
Exactly.
And I think, in the early years of Grendel, when you move from Devil by the Deed and we opened it up to sort of generational Grendels and different artists, part of what was going on there, I think very much was exactly that thing where, to go from the Pander run to Bernie's run was a huge difference, extreme difference. And for me, the series was all the better for it, people, because the reader sort of comes to expect, they get comfortable in a certain spot, and you need to shake them out of that, I guess. Yep.
Exactly.
To me, it was always like seeing it through the viewpoint of that character, because like seeing it through the viewpoint of Christine, it's more kind of, nouveau futuristic. It's that Pander Brothers feel. And then you kind of get down to the like dirt with the Brian Lee song, and then Bernie's kind of brings it down to that more like home felt or that kind of rough style that he did back then. So it was always kind of like, this is how this character sees their story, and that's the artist like bringing it out.
Yeah.
Well, and Matt, you were also always really interested in collaboration.
So cool.
And would encourage me, and I'm assuming others, to bring something to you and say, what do you think? Here's a way of, in our run, right, Devil's Reign, to split the book in half, have different art styles for the beginning and the end. I think you described it as a newspaper.
A history book.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I don't know if you remember, Tim, that was based on you showing me the development work you had done you were slated to do the autobiography of Frederick Douglass for Classics Illustrated. And
I wasn't really slated.
You were getting ready to pitch it. Yeah. But you used a kind of pseudo woodcut sort of style. And I was very taken with that. So I was like, hey, let's see if we can incorporate that. And of course you dialed that back a bit, but the woodcut look, but yeah. So I've always been into the collaboration thing, especially, and the way that came about for me was, when I finished the first Mage storyline and the first Grendel graphic novel, I was quite young and I was getting a lot of accolades and shit. And I was very suspicious of that. I thought, no, I can't get comfortable with that. I've got to like challenge myself more. And that's why I decided to start writing stuff for other artists, to force myself to indulge in other visual viewpoints, otherwise I kind of I think my own art would have kind of fallen into a sameness. Similarly, that's why I always worked plot and dialogue fashion, what had become known at that point as Marvel style for scripts. So not a full script panel by panel, because I kind of had a moral feeling that if I wanted that level of control at that point, I should draw it myself. I can draw, but it was my only interest in working with other artists was to have them bring something to the table a large part of something to the table, you know. And
that's kind of also too, you developed a different art style for Mage and Grendel just within for yourself to kind
yeah,
of.
I'm a little schizophrenic in that regard. Yeah.
I mean, the characters are so different that
They're very different stories, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, very different stories. Yeah.
it's so cool with all the different Grendels too. It's good for like a fan like me who likes to sketch and draw, because then it like makes your brain just want to create all these different Grendels. Last night while I was making my notes, obviously as an artist, just it gets crazy, but I just ended up drawing a bunch of like heads.
Oh,
and
right
then
on.
just
Yeah.
filling in as many
Yeah.
different styles as I
Yeah,
could.
yeah. Great.
Also
See,
on these notes, of course.
And the funny thing is, you know, I've done so much collaboration with Grendel, as you say. And
So
I
fun.
love seeing other people draw Grendel. I love it. You know, just that little page of doodles you have there is fantastic.
I love
It's
it.
exactly the opposite with Mage. Anytime I see somebody else draw Kevin Matchstick, I'm like, yeah, that's just not right. It's like when you see somebody else draw Peanuts, you know?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, no,
It
that
can
doesn't
never.
work.
Like-
You know, on the other hand, though, you had not, you hadn't let anyone else into Hunter's world. You had, you know, I mean, you'd let
Right.
artists interpret your stories, but whereas
nobody
Grendel
else wrote them,
Tales,
yeah,
yeah,
right.
no one else wrote them. So that was like a huge privilege for me to be able to go in there and play. And because I had been working with you and as you say, the Grendel scripts were done Marvel style, that was also, you know, I wasn't really comfortable telling Tim panel 1, panel 2, and so on. And so I wrote that script Marvel style. I think, you know, would be like one page, and here's kind of what needs to happen on this page. Here are the dialogue and captions that are going to be there. But the pacing was largely established by Tim.
So you were not giving him moment to moment visuals.
Not-
You were
no,
giving him
not at all.
reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Letting him.
Yeah.
And I will say that's a good way to work with Tim. He's good at that.
Well,
Well-
and I mean, also because, you know, for me, feeling very much like an amateur and working with someone who knew what he was doing, I was quite happy not to be in control of any of that stuff. And it makes it more interesting too, because then, you know, the pencils come back and of course Tim took the art to places that I wouldn't have imagined originally, you know, so it makes it more fun. And
Tim, how was it for you to interpret these words and get this art out? Because it seems like it's tough material to work with, and you had talked about it was like kind of tough living with it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I not remembered that it was Marvel style. Now, Marvel style can mean also no dialogue,
Yeah.
right.
but dialogue is really critical for pacing.
Mhm.
How much room you're going to leave for the dialogue in the panel and just the beats, right?
Right.
And but it is more work, so that was partly why I think Sarah on Billy 99 did the same thing. She didn't call panels.
But did
And
she
with
provide you with the captions and dialogue though?
I don't remember. I think she did though.
Okay.
And we talked a lot. She and I talked a lot. I mean, we were both in Seattle, and
Mhm.
so we would meet too, and that kind of thing. But the way I think that was part of why it wore on me, though. Also, just the amount of work that was, but also the story. And I know when you bugged me at some point, Di, and said, "Are you still working on this thing?" Because I hadn't sent you anything for a long time. And I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And I sent you probably like 20 pages or something. And you said, "Oh my God, I had no idea you were doing this. And
Mhm.
I think that was well into the second volume,
Mhm.
but the rape had a really big effect on, I mean, it was partly fun to draw and to stretch
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
And I knew Teddy would do a great job with it. Um, but it did have okay, I got to put this down for a little bit and probably too long. I'm sorry.
Right.
But I don't remember if I had anything else to do. I probably did.
Well, yeah, no, I think you did. I mean, again, because I wrote those scripts in '93, and which, and all of a sudden, um, you were at Image. I mean, the shift in your career from Billy 99 to Death Blow was huge, and you were suddenly very, very busy, as I recall.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the scripts were always, sorry, you have a week to draw this.
right.
They were very
and
bright,
and I wasn't
Jim's best
in a
friend.
huge rush, so it was, I mean,
Right.
I was cool with waiting. I don't think we didn't actually go into official production, say at Dark Horse on the book, until 97 or 98. I think the comics came out in 99. So we didn't even put it on the schedule until then. And I guess that's why I had no idea that in between all the other stuff you were doing, and your schedule was filling up really rapidly at that point.
Yeah.
You were vaulting into superstardom. And so I had no idea that you had been working on some of those pages in the meantime. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure there were quite a few pages,
Yeah.
just penciled.
Mhm.
And you were pleasantly surprised, as
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm glad you were. And it turned out, once I started doing it again, I don't remember how much was left to do,
Mhm.
but that went pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite endings of any story I've ever done. Next to Hey Hey Linda Lee. Um,
You draw a fine cat.
it doesn't come easy.
Yeah, well,
But there are just certain lines that just, the one I always repeat to you is male, I'm sure.
That was a good line.
yeah, Matt, and in fact, Matt,
As all the cat owners giggle.
Matt was happy. Matt was happy with that too. And a great thing about Matt's editing, and I really should have, I personally should have done much more of this in my own career as an editor. Looking at those scripts last night and Matt's notes on them, he would point to stuff and say, "Oh, that's great, fantastic, good line, blah blah," and sort of positive responses along with the,
Right.
the eyebrows raised and, "Oh my God, more talking heads." But yeah, that's really important. Looking at that stuff again, I was thinking, oh, that's so nice. That feels so good, whereas I think many editors go in and they're just ready to point out all the shit that's wrong, and without ever,
as you well know, so much of their day-to-day existence is just making sure that train runs on time. And maybe they just feel like they just don't have time to put in those little star marks.
Well, there's a real lack of good editors. There's a lot of apprenticeship that goes on, probably less now with the way comics are being run now, but
not much training at all.
No, and also you're constantly trying to prove yourself because you want to not be an apprentice all your life, and that kind of, and one of the ways to do that is, your audience, sadly, is not the creators, but your powers that be. And so you're trying to prove, look what I can do. I can tell them not to do this and
mark your territory.
you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Archie Goodwin was really good. He didn't talk to me much. We had some very nice conversations, mostly about creepy and eerie and things like that. And other artists that he worked with and stuff. But
What did he
you
edit
would
you
just call
on?
me. I'm sorry.
What was he your editor on?
Long Halloween.
Hmm.
Mm.
And he was sick during a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
But also I did that story with James on Legends of the Dark Knight,
Mm-hmm.
the Cavalier stuff. And he would just call and say, panel 6 on page 15, I love the way the cigarette is falling out of the guy's mouth or something like that. Okay, talk to you later. So
and when he did have
two things, it would be clear that he really looked at it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was positive, and he didn't need to do, if he'd said, okay, you gotta, he would have said something if he wanted me to do something different.
yes,
But he
Mm-hmm.
didn't.
but he never made that feel like marking his territory, like pissing on something.
Mm-hmm,
Just
mm-hmm,
for the
mhm.
Not
effect of it, you know.
anything like that. No.
Yeah.
I remember Shelley Bond, another great editor. When she would read through stuff, she would be asking, "Is this made her stop reading? Was this what I was doing with this panel? Was this what I intended to do,
Mm.
or was I unfocused or what?" And then I could say, no, this is what I intended to do. Or she would point out, oh yeah, shit, yeah, I can see it. I was busy actually thinking about the next panel. I had more interest in the next panel or the next page or whatever.
Right.
I thought that was a great way of just focusing on letting me do what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Ask
And
me a
not
question.
stopping if it was disturbing the reading experience.
Yeah.
Just asking the questions, then not telling me.
Right.
Just ticking off boxes to have fulfilled an editorial job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this kind of marking your territory just for the sake of it thing, or feeling like you have to show that you're earning your paycheck, makes me have to tell I do almost no and have done almost no just sheer commercial illustration in my entire career, for that very reason, because you have to deal with an art director who's probably going to do that to you, and there's a famous old joke, how many art directors does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but does it have to be a light bulb?
Yeah.
That's great.
Every illustrator goes,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny because the shorthand of saying it, I can't stand doing licensed products, but of course comics are licensed products.
Mhm.
But I did a short story in the Buffy universe and a cover for that, and it
When
was
it was at Dark Horse?
yeah,
Yeah.
Tales of the Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
And Joss Whedon wrote it, and it's not a very good writing job. He wrote it all in a poem form. And I recently put it up. Maybe you saw it.
Yeah,
Di.
I was just gonna say you've been posting that recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was 13 pages, and Lee Lovrish did a great, colorful job, which I thought was a really good approach to it. But man, the cover especially was just, I must have done 10 sketches.
Before one was accepted, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was 10 times better, right?
Every one was worse than the one before.
Yeah, no shit, man. Yeah.
So anyway,
Tim, you stated that you posted that Wolverine and Gambit cover recently, and and the same thing when you turn in a sketch to an editor or somebody that has to approve something, don't give them more than one sketch, because they're gonna pick the one you like the least.
Right.
Well, I didn't. I went one at a time.
Yeah.
And they said no to everyone until they found the work.
Wow.
and did that.
Fun.
Yeah.
With all these different editorial approaches in mind, I wonder if you guys could share your insights on Harvey Kurtzman a little bit, because it seems like we've been talking about writer, editor, unique IP stuff. I always thought that it was a fine line with Kurtzman between like too much control and then kind of doing all the layouts and saying, all right, greatest illustrator of all time, do it just like this, only make it much better. Is that an ideal? Is that too far? Or what do you guys think about him?
Way too far. Yeah, I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah, we have a couple
look,
stories.
Harvey Kurtzman. So okay, maybe we can forgive that, but that kind of
Rare exception.
control,
Yeah.
that kind of control is what's given editors, and especially comics editors, a really bad rap through the years. I think of Mort Weisinger at DC, who by all accounts was a horrible tyrant and took credit for the work of his creators as if it were his own. But again, yeah, if we're talking Kurtzman, then you can make the argument that he knew better.
Well, it's amazing that, especially on the war stuff, which was is my favorite stuff of EC, that given all that, he got such great work out of people like Jack Davis and Wood,
Orlando.
that they accepted that as just the way it was. And also, I think he was nuts about the detailing on specific airplanes or jeeps or guns or stuff like that. No, this is late fall 1942. That's not the guns that kind of thing. And Matt, you have I don't know if you want to tell them, but you have some stories.
Yeah, I actually I did Harvey's very last story.
Really?
That's the Bradbury one.
The Bradbury one, yeah. Topps Comics. It was being packaged by Byron Price Publications. They had the rights to Ray Bradbury comics, and Harvey had done the layouts, the adaptations of a certain story. It was a real throwaway Bradbury story, more of just like a writing exercise than anything else.
It burns me up.
It's called It Burns Me Up. Yep. It's a extremely stereotypical drawing room murder mystery told from the point of view of the corpse on the floor. And they tried to get him to do other things, said, there's much more famous Bradbury stuff. And he was stuck on that. And when you realize how sick he was at the time, it was, he wanted to do a story about a pissed off dead guy. And that gave it a certain bizarre poignancy, But they contacted me and said, we have this thing that's laid out by Harvey. Would you be interested in doing finishes? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so we kind of struck a deal, and they sent me the layouts, and oh my God, it was like getting a sledgehammer between the eyes. You could literally see him dying on every page. Wow. The last 3 pages had no drawing on them at all. They were just panel borders, and he had inscribed the text. So I called them and said, guys, this is more than just finishes. I need to, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to take this through to really nice fruition, but we need to strike a new deal.
Yeah.
I said, and additionally, Harvey very bizarrely, like every panel had a caption this big in it. Like he had just transcribed the entire story. And they said, well, we're actually running into a problem with that a lot with Bradbury. Nobody's quite willing to cut the lyricism of his verbiage, And I said, I'll cut it, no problem, man. I said, it's the difference between a comic adaptation and prose. This isn't prose. All you need is an instance or 2 or 4 of that lyricism to capture the Bradburyism of it all. So I ended up finishing it all. I did it painted, a fully painted piece. It was very, very cartoony. It looks nothing like anything else I've ever done. And I was really anxious to get Harvey's feedback, and the very sad punctuation is that he died before I could talk to him about it.
And the story was saved.
But he did see it.
He did see it. There's a happy amendment. He who was it reached out to him? But Tim, it might have been Chiarello. I think it was Chiarello reached out to Harvey's. Had seen an interview I did about this, and reached out to Harvey's widow, who said that yes, he had seen it, and on a day that was otherwise clouded by pain and exhaustion, he got a very big smile out of it. So
that's great.
That was a terrific.
It's probably because of the lettering.
Right, and Tim fucking lettered it. Yes, that's the
nice.
little group we have here, isn't it?
That's great.
Well, it's all talking about editorial control. It's all down to trust, I believe. I remember doing Four Devils, One Hell, and I got the script from Diana, and I was fearing this is my first American work. And Diana had written this cover letter saying, don't be intimidated by James's script when he was writing, I can't even remember, tons of people, 400 people walking down the street or whatever. It's you who's the artist. Trust and do what you think works best for the story. And that made me very confident, because then I felt, okay, she's trusting that I can adapt this into images that will help the story.
Although, Teddy, I remember on one of the big street scenes you're talking about, you had painted a little figure over in the gutter that said, James, you're killing me.
Oh, man. That's great. Speaking of you, Teddy, I'm really interested because I think I had said in one of our episodes, oh, this is like, Tim must have done an ink wash here, and then Teddy did colors like around it or underneath it. We were wondering how that happened, and Tim came in on the chat and said, I didn't do any ink washes, and that's all Teddy. So I'm really interested in how you got your colors in there, what ideas you got from the art, or if you were able to see, or how you interpreted it, and then where the palette kind of came from too.
I would say that all comes back to trust, like Teddy said. Go ahead, Teddy.
Yeah, well, the way Tim was drawing is perfect for coloring. I remember seeing Amazon. This was my introduction to Tim's work, and all I wanted to do first, I could see this strange, what you call it, a wonderful mix of European comics mixed with the best of our American comic tradition. And I just loved it. I loved that wonderful mix of these two continents. And I wanted to, it was screaming for colors. Like I wanted to color Tim's work. Yeah. Then Tim is one of those who draws very open.
Yeah.
Which means that you can use, which is what I think is wonderful, that you use the color white as a color and not just a piece of paper. It's actually a color in.
Yep.
If you leave the white out, or if you leave something white, it's actually reflected about the color around it. Then you use the colors to create the shapes and not just filling in colors. And that's what I wanted to do. So it was wonderful. After all those years, we talked many times about we should do something together. And then finally,
you're particularly good at that, Teddy, making white be a color. It's so significant when you do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Teddy, talk about, because this was done blue line process, and that's not something that's really not something that's done at all anymore. It's expensive, it's difficult.
And it was also shipped overseas and back and forth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So blue line plus international shipping. How did you deal with that? And what was it? Did you feel disconnected at all, or
with the distance, or
with the other creators and getting like a feeling for like where they were coming from in order to put it on the page?
You must have had email by then, right?
Oh, yeah,
98,
yeah.
90, yeah.
That must be email, yeah. I'm sure if one goes searching somewhere, one can find some old. That must have been old email stuff. I probably
I still
changed.
have emails from then. Yeah, I don't throw
Yeah.
anything.
But I would have
Right.
had the blue lines created and sent to you.
Yeah.
Unless you were able
No,
to
there's
make
no
them
unless. You
yourself.
wouldn't let that out of your production hands. No, you wouldn't.
No, I used to do blue line myself, and it was such a pain in the ass to do.
Yeah.
Because you had to
The-
put some color on, some special mixture, then expose it to light.
Right, so you made
print.
chemically based blue lines, yes, yeah. Yeah, that is a pain in the ass.
Is there another
Yeah.
way to do it?
I think,
these were
well,
printed.
print them.
Just get it
yeah.
printed, yeah, as a like a blueprint, you know.
Mhm,
At that time, was that possible?
mhm, mhm.
I think
They
so.
were
Yeah.
printed on this.
Expensive.
It wasn't when I
More-
was doing Mage, I think.
More
It wasn't-
more expensive, but
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I was doing Mage and we were doing all those blue lines, as Teddy said, you have to expose the light, but it has to be a very bright light.
Yeah, exactly.
So I went to the local Woolworths and got a sun lamp, and we mounted it on the wall, and then we would just stick the stuff underneath and turn it on for 5 minutes, and bingo, there was your blue line, you know.
Yeah.
Didn't Joe Matt do his own blue lines?
And in fact he did the first Batman Grendel that way, but he came out to stay. This is when Barb and I were living very briefly there in California. He came out to stay with me to do it. All we did was take it outside and set it outside in the California sun, and that did the same thing.
Wow.
Eddie, the comment
we,
that
we had to make sure to make them by like 10 or 11 o'clock when the sun was at full zenith, though. So there you go.
Oh wow.
Very cool.
That's what they look like. Yep.
Yeah.
That's fine, yeah.
The over and under of it all.
The comment that Eli and I had made, Teddy, about your dry brushing was that we could imagine a very young kid looking at it and saying, I know exactly which Procreate brush that is. We were just sort of marveling at how consistent the grain on the dry brush was. The amount of finesse that you use all the time is something that we love about your work. Are you just sitting next to a paper towel and testing it every single stroke, or what?
Constantly, it's about getting this gouache to have the right consistency, and it's I have a special brush that I've worn out to fit perfectly for the strokes that I want them to do.
Your dry
Yeah,
brush.
the old beat up brushes, man. You treasure those like fine wine, don't you?
Exactly, yeah. It's fantastic.
Wow, that's so cool.
One of the things, Tim, that Eli and I were talking about is being our age. We met you, through Batman and your other works. And, this story doesn't have capes or rogue galleries, in the traditional sense. What's it like, kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's a different kind of danger.
Well, as Teddy was talking about, I had to learn, and it wasn't until maybe towards the end of Long Halloween that I kind of clicked on how to draw American superhero comics to for greater impact, because all my sensibility was European comics. And so the Cavalier was that way. Jeff used to always want me to get in closer. Jeff used to say, why can't I put a camera on the end of a broomstick and throw it through a window? Tell me why I can't do that. But it's in his comics, so you could do that, I suppose. But that was foreign to me. And then it eventually did click, and I could do both. But by the time of at the time of Devil Child, I still was I felt like I knew just the approach to take, especially because it was such an intense story. And for the most part, there were a lot of panels that had to happen, which is not my preferred way of doing it, but it's much more European.
But that was also your choice. I mean,
Yeah, but I had to. It was dictated by the story, though.
mhm.
I mean, you needed to have let's say a back and forth. Somebody speaks, the other person speaks, or there are a number of you played with time. Stacy older, Stacy younger,
Mhm. Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And in order to make that work, you had to cut it up.
Right.
The black panel borders was also very Dave Sim, and sorry I mentioned his name, but and European or independent comics, that kind of thing. But I also knew that also would give Teddy something else to play with,
Mhm.
especially using the white.
Well, the pages are really, really open. Hold on, I'll be right back. I ferreted out what I had last night, and so I mean you can see how. Can you see? How you've left so much space in there, and so here's the wedding.
Right.
Can you guys see this? I can't tell from my.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Jeff would have hated these, Tim.
I know, but
I've lost
I mean,
sound.
he wasn't writing.
Huh?
I know shit. Yeah. I said Jeff would have hated these.
And then, and here's the last page.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's so open.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Man.
And the first one you showed is very influenced by Sim.
Put the black line on it there, Teddy, so we can see the whole thing.
But then I have to make it match.
Yeah, register it there. Up.
Pull back.
Yeah.
Pull it back a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
How great is that?
Yeah, how great is
So
that?
cool. And that's like literally how you worked right there. Like you would have the underneath there, and then you would add the colors.
Yeah, so the underneath is a blue version of the line work. Then the black version is on a clear acetate overlay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you paint underneath, and you're continually laying that black plate on to see.
Show Teddy's thing again.
Oh, it should
He's
be.
holding up the blue line.
Yeah.
Teddy, talk. Say something. You'll come to the floor.
right.
Yeah, that's the blue line here.
Keep talking.
And
Teddy, talk again.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just the blue line work. I don't know what you can see. Can you see it all?
You got paid for that page?
That's so cool.
Is there a reproduction risk with Blue Line of the acetate not registering when it gets?
Oh, man.
Okay, yes.
It's a constant headache. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Or you
especially
also have, if you don't paint through, then suddenly you get a non-solid black, where there's supposed to be like a full black area, and you've only painted part of it. Then suddenly you get some part of it that's solid black, and then the other unpainted part is this vague.
Right.
Yep.
yeah, sort of a transparent black almost.
Right.
But who said that you got paid for that page?
I said
You,
that.
Eli?
Yeah.
I got a funny story about that. For
It was a joke.
I know it was, but there's a further joke. For The Devil in Our Midst, the Steven Seagal penned Paul Grist Fairy Tales series.
Another favorite.
I was doing the covers for those for the Grendel Tales,
Right.
and on some of them I did a collaborative effort, like with Teddy. I did on Teddy, but on this one I was doing it myself, and I was very worried. Paul's art was so sparse and simplistic that I couldn't figure out a way to add my own gist to it without making it just look like his stuff. You know, I didn't want to render it realistic, quote unquote. I wanted to maintain that cartooniness, and I thought I need something to force some breakup here that'll bring an element to it that wouldn't be found otherwise. So I did all of those originals that big.
Right.
They're,
Oh, I remember that.
trading
Yeah.
card size. And as a result, all the paint and all the texture on the paper blew up real big and looked exaggerated. And I'll never forget, I brought that first one into the Dark Horse office, and Di said, "Eli, we're paying you for that? We're paying you cover rate for that?" And I said, "Di, it's a creator-owned book. I'm paying me cover rate for that."
That's great. What an interesting idea. Like, how it's so cool. You bring all these different ways, like especially those other covers where you laid stuff out, the silverback covers, but also the
well, I didn't do those. Those were Ron Turner, but yeah,
right,
those were very kind of like 3D.
The one that Chris Pitzer, I think he owns it, that you like glued in some blades and there's like that circle of blades and that was cool.
And the first one of Devil's Hammer, Rob Walton had done in his pitch, he had taken a portrait of Christ, just a color copy of a portrait of Christ, and painted a Grendel mask on it. So I just took that, and then I went and got some gold acrylic paint, and I just swooshed that all around in big, to do like a gold frame, you know. And then I went through with a stick and just like carved furrows in it and little details and stuff.
Amazing.
I mean, you know, it's, as we said at the beginning, this is part of the aesthetic of Grendel, is to always keep mixing it up, always trying a new thing, always pushing it in the directions that you didn't expect. So,
and that cover too, you know, part of the problem, of course, with gold is that it doesn't scan.
Doesn't look like gold.
It looks kind of like brown mush. So if I'm not mistaken, I convinced
you had to photograph it because it was 3-dimensional. You wouldn't have been able to put it on a scanner.
But we also, I convinced them to go to a 5th color gold so that we could get the true gold on that cover. Yeah.
We've spent so much time, 40 weeks, looking at every Hunter Rose story under the sun. And one of the things that we went to Matt was, what themes and ideas should we be looking at? This story is so powerful because it's this great gear shift into legacy and into Christine. I'm wondering if you guys, especially Diana, if you can sort of talk about Christine, her themes, what we should be looking at as we spend the 13 weeks that will follow being completely obsessed with Devil's Legacy.
Well, that's probably more a question for Matt, I think, who wrote Christine. I'm going to cede to Matt on that.
Well, you know, I always have the tidy little analogy that you know, Mage is me looking inward, and Grendel is me looking outward. So every aspect of Grendel usually was something that was occurring to me in my life at the time. So, you know, with Hunter, of course, you know, I was kind of an angry young man, a little too smart for my own good. Imagined myself as a certain level of suave sophistication that I didn't have. So a certain wish fulfillment there. But then, as I was getting ready to, you know, expand the storyline into something else, I was dating a woman who I had an on and off relationship with for a number of years. And in one of those breaks we had apart from each other, she had a child. So, well, we lost Di there temporarily. And so for the first time ever, I got to see up close the kind of fiery maternal instinct. I mean, part of switching Grendel from a man to a woman was just for the shock value and the huge amount of change, to challenge myself to a write from a woman's point of view, which I had never done before. But you know, she, whereas Grendel is cold and calculated and domineering, she's fiery and protective and desperate. So her motivations are just utterly different than his, and yet they wear the same face, and ultimately she gets sucked into the same madness in that violence will solve your problems, which, you know, we find out it doesn't really do.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much for doing this. This is amazing. What, like, how does it feel to kind of like get the band back together? Like, I don't know how much you guys talk or like see each other, you know.
One of the things, you know, I'm at a point in my career in my life where I'm kind of tired of conventions, but one of the great things about conventions was you got to hang out with your buddies all weekend long, you know, who you share such creative mojo with, and you know, inevitably don't usually live in the same immediate vicinity. So, you know, cons, great chance to see everybody and hang, and we're certainly missing that, I think.
Yeah. Although, you know, I think too, there's something really special about this relationship in that recent back issue magazine that focuses almost entirely on your career. I described it as family, you know, Grendel family. We, all of us, sort of came in, began our careers about the same time. It was the era of independent comics. We all were kind of politically motivated to change things, and you know, in terms of creators' rights and ownership. And despite Robert Kirkman having decided that he discovered that some 20 years later, but you know, we came in, we were young, we were hungry, we wanted to do things differently, and there's something about Grendel, and this probably goes back to you, Matt, and your sort of embracing attitude, I guess, where it does feel like family. You know, you guys are all my family. And though we don't, you know, well, I see you, Matt, but we don't see each other very often, you know, there is something, I don't know, fundamental, I guess, that was created back then that continues through the years, at least for me. So,
Well, and for me, either the first or the second time I went to San Diego, I met you, Di, you, Matt, and Shrek, and I suddenly had work. And Matt pretended to know my work graciously. I don't think he really did, but that's all right.
Yeah. I had seen the Three Thieves World stuff. I didn't have a full set, but I knew you through Thieves World.
All right.
And you dedicated issue 2, you said, for Matt and Diana, the first to show interest, and just look where it's led.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that was obviously a huge turning point for my career, but also to get to know these very creative, very interesting, very kind people, generous people, was a really big deal. Man, I went to San Diego not knowing all I had was Thieves World and Myth Adventures. So I had nothing, in other words. And
well, you had done 3 or 4 pages of Grendel tryouts that Frederick brought over to me, and there again, it was you thought what we wanted was more Panda Brothers, and it looked very Panda Brother-ish, and I said, no, that's what we do here. We don't repeat ourselves.
It was all I knew. I went to I can't remember why. I mean, obviously, maybe Dyer, it had to be after the con, but I went to my local comic book store and said, okay, show me Grendel. No, it wasn't like that. It was like, okay, what's good out there? What's popular? What's happening? And they handed me the current, which was Panda Brothers. And then, so when I guessed you asked for a tryout, or maybe I just sent them to you.
I think
that's all
I think they just showed up in the mail, and what was impressive for me, again, you know, I always tell you this, was the amount of black on those pages, which struck me as fearless, and yes, and then I showed those to Matt, and it kind of went from there. You know, oh, we have to get this guy, sort of. So
Well, and educate him about, as Matt was just saying, that's not what we do here. But yeah, I was wildly open to that, and then I got to do a Grendel who never had a mask, so that worked out.
And then and Teddy, I first encountered you. I was in Toronto, and Mark Asquith, who was the manager of the Silver Snail at that point, showed me this Danish Superman graphic album.
Fantastic.
And then it was about a year later at San Diego, and you were there with Henning, I think, right?
We had done a Tarzan story. Don't you
A
remember? We had
No.
done
I met you before we did the Tarzan story.
Tarzan story.
Because I turned around and Henning had introduced himself to me at one point, and he said, "This is Teddy Kristiansen." And I was like, "Holy shit! All right, I got your Superman book." Yeah, and the Tarzan story. I don't know if you guys ever saw that, Ben and Eli. It was a short story. It was in Malibu had the rights to Tarzan at one point. It was a series called Tarzan: The Lost City. Is that correct, Teddy?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And it was one of those flip books where one story was on one side, you flip it, there was another book on the other side. And Teddy had started to adapt one of actually my favorite Burroughs short stories. One of Burroughs' best books is the sixth one, Jungle Tales of Tarzan. It's all stories about Tarzan when he's come to maturity, but he has not yet encountered outside people, just the local natives and the apes, and that's it. And so they're all very savage and poignant in a way that gets lost in a lot of the later stories. And Teddy had started to adapt it, and I think you guys approached me saying, "Would you want to add a script to this? You know, that you didn't feel confident doing the script in English," and so I did. It's a terrific little adaptation, I say, and it's it keeps. I kept the language very rough and ape-like, you know, like he doesn't have big, complicated human thoughts. It's all this, that, you know.
And that was the introduction. Then Matt introduced me to Diana, who immediately said, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "I would like to do a Death Face with Eddie Campbell."
Not most people's first response. We're an eclectic bunch here.
But yeah, and so we did do that. That was painted color, and the Tarzan too was painted color, was it?
Yes.
Not? Yeah.
And then I remember I had seen some old pencils of Four Devils, One Hell from the first issue from Philip Bond.
Philip Bond, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that fell through, but then suddenly Diana and Matt asked if I would do that adaptation.
We had started to produce that back when Kimiko was going down the tubes.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And when it finally went down, several years later, it ended up at Dark Horse. And at that point, Philip was like, "Nah, that whole experience left an ugly taste in my mouth. I don't want to go there anymore."
Yeah, and I think, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure he ever got that art back. You know, it was
scattered to the winds. Bad management in those days.
Yeah.
Teddy, what else do you remember? Like the first time that you saw Grendel, or the first time that, you know, Matt's work kind of entered your purview?
Teddy, how did it come about that we then paired you up with James for that project? Because those scripts were already in existence back when Grendel was still at Kimiko.
Yeah, I think that was after after the Eddie Campbell book. Then Diana asked me if I would.
Was it? I don't think so. I think James might have asked for you at that point.
Right. Yeah.
He was hanging around with Steve Siegel at that point, which was my first intro to Steve. And then Steve had written Tim's Amazon. So suddenly it was like this wonderful spider web.
Oh, yeah.
Little incestuous, but.
Well, I think of it more as a family tree, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just this relationship leads to that relationship, leads to this creation, leads to that creation.
Right.
Yeah.
Incestuous implies a certain unhealthiness, and I don't think that's the case with this. I think this is a very
What are you
Very
talking
So did you get? Is Grendel translated over there, or did you get?
I don't think it's in Danish, is it? Is it in any of the Scandinavic languages?
No,
To
it's
me, I don't
not.
think it is.
Not that I know of. At
Yeah,
least.
I don't think it is.
Out in French, isn't it?
It's in French.
Spanish,
Yeah.
French, German. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's about it in Europe.
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have to seek out some international versions then. Was there any like, sometimes the international versions have different covers or more localized?
The group here, let me dig these up while we're talking here. But the group Planeta, who is a Spanish publisher,
Yeah.
did beautiful hardcover editions of the Grendel omnibuses. And hold that thought, I'll go.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool. I love the international covers. They really show kind of the.
Curiously, I was looking at the French edition of Devil Child last night, and they flopped. They put the second issue cover on the front of their hardcover collection, and Stacy in the window on the back.
So
They print them in
well, they same covers, but this was really cool. Can you see the?
Wow.
Wow,
Wow.
that's nice.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
That's in Espanol.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Heavy.
Yeah.
That's the whole cycle there. That's everything.
Minus the Grendel Tales. That's the 4 omnibuses. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh wow. It's a lot of work, Matt. I mean, that's.
Yeah. It's a long time, man.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and that's something else that's really important to note, because back in the 80s, when we were all rah creators' rights and it's important for creators to own their own material. So sure, a lot of people started creating their characters, coming up with their own work. There were independent publishers there to support that. But cut to 30, 40 years later, and really Matt is kind of one of the few people who has kept doing his own work, who was committed to that stuff. So
Yeah. Who else has done that?
yeah, not
Stan.
many.
Stan
Stan,
maintained.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Stan doesn't even really take the like side tracks into like mainstream work.
No,
Even I mean,
Mm-mm.
Matt, do you feel like
once in a
sometimes?
blue moon.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like it's a one for them, one for me type of thing, like the actors kind of say, or you just enjoy delving in those worlds, like you said?
Yeah,
for the
I've talked with you guys about this on previous episodes too.
Sure.
I've always just kind of followed my muse. I have no battle plan. I have no 5-year business plan, much to my detriment, I'm sure. It's just, somebody waves a shiny object in front of me, like, ooh, I like that as a kid. Okay, I'll go play with that for a little while, and then I never really come back to my own stuff. But it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. It's I get kind of equal thrill out of all of it. I'm I've been in this a long time. I've never been bored with my job ever.
That's great. Not everyone can say that, man.
Yeah.
I can't say it.
Oh, what'd you get bored with? Deathblow?
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the early 90s stuff was just.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think that's across the board. The only shining light is the art usually, and so that's what we can say.
Well,
Yeah, but
Deep exhalation.
about Deathblow, there were pages that were fun to do,
Mhm.
but no.
Who
Right.
wrote those
Brandon
stories?
Choi.
Brandon Choi.
Yeah, he was Jim's best friend.
Mm.
So almost every issue I had a week to do or something.
Wow.
And I couldn't bitch about Brandon because he's Jim's best friend.
Mhm.
Jeez.
So that was grueling.
But in those days, Image
there were some
Comics were
fun-
like one panel a page, one big
No.
splash, right? For
No.
better sales of
They're
original art.
not the way he wrote. Not the way
One
he
person
wrote,
and
he
bullet casing.
overwrote everything. I mean, there were
Really?
thousands
Yeah.
of balloons on every fucking yeah.
Wow. Wow.
But there were also things
Wow.
like there were a number of Batman things. Alan Grant wrote a 2-part. I can't even remember the title of it, but it was Arkham had a baseball team,
Oh my God.
and
I don't
know,
think
I've
you can go any further.
I had to make a living, so there was a lot of stuff like that.
But those, I mean, as grueling as that sort of sounds, those were important steps for your career too.
And then to get to these amazing
think so.
works with Jeff Loeb, the
Yeah, and
color
the difference
series,
is
and
Jeff was interested in working with Tim's sensibilities, in eliciting from Tim, what sort of approach
Yes.
you want to do to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took a long time for us to learn that about ourselves.
Mhm.
Reciprocal. I mean, Challengers, there is some good work in there, but it's really kind of throw a lot of shit at the wall and see what sticks.
It's more Jeff heavy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he'd never written a comic before, and so
Yeah.
he just wanted to play with stuff, and which is
Huh.
understandable. But it wasn't until the first, and then he went to the X group,
Mhm.
right? And so he was not available while I was doing all this other stuff that was unfulfilling. And it wasn't until the first Halloween special that we really clicked.
Had you guys,
Yeah.
how had you guys met? Because it was before all of that then.
Well, it was through Barbara Randall
Hmm.
at San Diego.
Mhm.
And I showed up with sample pages, which looked a lot like Jaime Hernandez. And she said, well, I don't have any place for this. But I can see you have some ability, and let me talk to some people. And Jeff, totally separately, had been approached because he was in movies.
Right. Right.
He'd been approached by Jeanette Kahn, who was interested in getting movie things going at these. And so he had some kind of at least verbal deal. And Barbara put us together.
Hmm.
And after one San Diego, I don't think I met him at San Diego, but I went up to LA afterwards and met him at his Universal Studio office.
Mhm.
And he had a train set on the floor, and he had like, Armani suit on with a wild tie and ponytail, bald on top, ponytail, it was a caricature and stuff. And I had a pink shirt on, I remember, because they made fun of that. And I said, have you looked in the mirror? Anyway, but so we're completely different personality types, but we became really, really good friends.
Mhm.
And a lot of that was just how we worked things out. And I've told this a number of times. He used to call, when we started the Halloween specials, he would have a legal pad where he took a credit card and made rectangles and then put notes in them. And then he would call me and describe every fucking page, every panel. So we'd be on the phone for like 5 hours, and I didn't have a credit card to do it, but I just took all this.
Start drawing. You were drawing on the phone?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, not drawing. I was taking notes, really. I would draw a rectangle and say.
You did not get an actual script?
I did later.
Oh.
But the point of this was how much we learned about each other. We're almost the same age. We loved comics. We loved movies. And he would refer to, when he first started, he wanted to cast actors as characters. That we lost that right after Charles. We just lost that right. But he would say, remember when Neil Adams did this, or Steranko did this, or whatever, and I did, and that we bonded that way. And so eventually,
Tim, that's funny you should say that about the credit card thing, because for years I worked very similarly. I would make myself, for an issue, I'd make myself a flow chart.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this one's specifically for Zorro, as you can see, but this is the number of pages, and I would just jot down just a couple of words about what happened on that page, so that I could see it as a whole flowing entity. You know.
Yeah, that's pretty much what he did.
Yeah.
Although it would be more, there'd be some panel breakdowns. Not always, but yeah, notes in them, and I just transcribed that. But this is before faxes. We couldn't believe faxes.
Right.
When they first came out.
Right.
I can just put this in here and you can see it later. You know, I mean, that kind of thing.
It's magic.
It's magic. Yeah, it was. And in the same way that FedEx was magic when it first happened. And I didn't get it.
Now it's here. Let me just take a quick shot of this layout and send it to you in a second, you know?
Yeah.
So, but that allowed us to learn about each other. And so we could be very different people and yet have a way of communicating that brought us very close.
Jeff was particularly good too, as I said there earlier, at realizing what he had in you, what your strengths were and everything, you know, what you really, how you really soared artistically. You know, I will say, even though I found our collaboration very successful, it was also kind of weighted down, I think, by the ideas I already had in mind for it when we started. It kind of, I've regretted ever since that I didn't give you something larger, like a bigger vista to work within, because that's what you excel at so strongly. I got to do that someday.
Yeah, still time.
Yeah. Well, but also,
but we did do that a little bit in the black, white, and red story that we did, because you were talking about how
that was a lot of fun.
I did write that plot in dialogue fashion, but I did not do the dialogue first. I just described what happened. And then Tim latched on to, for every page, as you pointed out, you were dating a fledgling interior designer at the time. Yeah. So he took one panel and made that a big dominant setting. And then everything else was smaller panels kind of orbiting it or sitting within it. And that was so fantastic, because that's exactly what I'm talking about in regards to the thrills of this style of working. That was not how I pictured that looking at all. And it came back and it forced me to, all right, well, he's got everything in this one dominant image. I've got to figure out how to fit verbiage into these small little panels to make it work. And, you know, and I did, it worked, you know.
And what verbiage that I will never forget. That script sent me running around the office trying to figure out if blowjob was spelled with a hyphen or not.
Well, there was definitely a time when I used to joke with Matt and
Most
say,
men don't care.
that Matt had to squeeze the blowjob in there somewhere.
Let me also point out, we won the Eisner for that story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd done a story in ink wash.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. That's like kind of your style now, I feel. I mean, like I said, when I met you before at a con, I have a Grendel sketch that you did, and to watch you do the ink wash completely changed how I thought about it, or even conceived of how it could be done with dipping in the water and watering it down and then going to
Tim,
it.
is there, for some reason, I in my mind, I remember Billy having ink washes. Billy has no ink washes?
No, it's douche paper.
Wait. Oh, that's right. It is to a shade. Yeah.
Different effect.
Yeah.
Similar effect, different technique. Yeah.
Did you like have a breakthrough with that story doing the ink wash, or that you were like, dang, I need to do this continually, or like?
No. I remember Jane saying to you, you should do more stuff like this, and you said no, it takes too damn long.
Well, you're inking a page twice,
Yeah,
essentially,
Yeah.
and you're not getting paid
twice.
for
Yeah.
that.
No, and in fact, you were not getting paid a great amount of money at all at that point. It
I
was
got paid more than on Billy.
that's that's what I'm talking about.
It
It's
wasn't
like,
the Wolverine Gambito money, was it?
right.
Or Batman money, or
Yeah.
whatever. Yes, no, I got, and I never should have lettered that. Although,
What, Billy?
yeah,
Oh, why?
it was a lot more work, and I didn't get paid very much.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, sorry.
And-
I was just thinking about the aesthetics and how beautiful it was.
Well, also, I was upset that you made me use ellipses.
In Billy?
Yes.
Hmm.
I was really enamored of,
Freestyling it.
Yeah.
well, a lot of my influence right at that point was Batman Year One.
Mm-hmm.
And so my inking was very much influenced by, it was all brush. I didn't use anything else. The layouts were often very more European than American, but the story was called for that. But Todd Klein had lettered Year One without ellipses.
Mm-hmm.
And so when later on I'd asked for Todd Klein on Death Blow, I said, I'd like you to use just hand-drawn.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, I don't do that anymore.
Oh. Because?
He didn't explain himself.
Hmm.
But I was always disappointed about that.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted, I don't think the roots of my falling in love with lettering were Artie Simic and Sam Rosen,
Mm-hmm.
and Ben Oda to a certain extent. And all that was, they were great at it, but it was all freehand.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted the look to be. It's more organic,
Mm-hmm.
I think I pasted them up. I pasted them on the.
Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah.
Pasted on the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But just a year or two prior to that, I had a terrible experience with Silverback. Had been the first issue, if I'm not mistaken, had been lettered completely freehand, and it looked like a 6-year-old had done it. I mean, it was so poorly done that lettering should not call attention to itself on the page, unless specifically you want the reader to focus on some particular thing. But overall, it should be, the reader should be taking it in more organically, more by osmosis. And this, and this was so poorly done, and the balloons were so
Scraggle ass.
Yeah, it was awful, just awful. And we had to completely redo that issue, and the balloons were on the board, so it was a nightmare. And yeah, I just it took me a while to get past that and get over it, kind of thing.
There's an old adage that comic book lettering should be the opposite of children. It should be heard and not seen.
Well, Richard Starkings changed everything for me in that regard. And it wasn't until we'd worked on a few things that because the first thing he created for me was a Sam Rosen font. And that's what The Long Halloween was all lettered with that. But then he asked me to write some alphabets, both in brush and in pen. But also he and John Rochelle, who works for him, and another designer, and fonts master, looked at Billy and the lettering I did on that, and then created a computer font, which has been in use. And for a while it was cracked back, pasted on that way, but then all digital after that.
Are most letterers using the fonts these days? Do you guys all use a font, or is it?
It's almost all done electronically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
certainly for the larger commercial companies, they insist on that now, and it helps when you're selling foreign licenses of the work as well.
You can just change
just
it.
makes
go in there.
makes
But
things
the
so much
interesting
easier.
thing, it's electronic, it's digital, it's digital versions of hand lettered fonts. So way back in the 70s and such, when indie comics were first creeping up, everybody was doing typesetting, and they would drop in actual mechanical typesetting, and it just didn't work. It didn't integrate with the artwork at all.
Right.
Oh no, you need that hand drawn appearance too.
Yeah, and you can build it into the program variations.
Right.
Here's
Right. 3 or 4 different, of each letter. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Also, there's so many beautiful handwritten fonts available.
Yep.
Compared to, like, let's say 20 years ago, when you had a couple of letterers and they were having their standard of lettering. Now you have so
many. Yeah.
that's cool.
And Richard's
greatly responsible for that.
Yeah.
Well,
Really
yes, but also his approach was always, it's going to look the most organic if you get the lettering to look that fits the artwork. So it's the artist's version of, and I said, well, what do you do when it's Mobius? And I don't think he's ever lettered Mobius or anything, but he said, well, that's what but he created a Travis Charest, Charest, whatever it is now.
Nobody seems to know.
Font, which is not easily readable, but it fits.
Yeah. But I would say that the same is true of great colorists too. I always talk with Brennan about this, about Dave Stewart, about how Dave colors stuff as if the artist himself had colored it. And Tim always points out, well, I don't color. Yeah, but when he colors you, it looks like that's how you would have colored it.
That's why I love working with him. And
and it doesn't look anything like he colors my stuff, and it certainly doesn't look anything like he colors, Hellboy, or it all just looks like, well, that's that artist's work come to color fruition, and it doesn't stand out. It melds seamlessly with the art,
Speaking of color, and Teddy, I know we're going back a long time, over 20 years, but I don't remember. I was thinking last night reading those scripts, and there are a lot of references to color in the scripts, and I don't remember if I ever sent you those scripts, or if you were working mostly with Tim, or if you were just off in independent land doing your own thing.
No, I get you send me the scripts, and you send me, of course, the line work.
Right.
What you call it, and then I just took it. I felt that Tim's that was not dictated to me. That was what you call it. There was some of the reds that were dictated because they had a very specific story point.
A Grendel face, blood.
Say again?
A Grendel face in the blood, or
exactly. But the rest was just what I felt was. I was trying to do it so muted because I felt that Tim's drawings were calling for this silence, this wonderful silence that would sort of contrast so well with the violence in the story. So
and there's a coldness too.
Yeah.
That
was the
emotional. for the colors.
We
Diana,
really.
Can I ask you one more about renegade psychiatrist Eric Oliver and his use of the tarot?
Oh, right.
We were talking about, our Wikipedia understanding of that tool, and its presence in this story is as interesting and enigmatic as it always appears to be. Can you talk about that a little
That was
bit?
all die too. That wasn't. I didn't hint at any of that in Grendel.
Yeah, that was, I mean, look, it's no secret that I was, at the time that I first wrote these scripts, 93, I was dating Dave Sim, famous misogynist, and and Dave was, I mean, there are conversations lifted whole cloth that I put into this story.
I did not know that. Wow.
That gives a certain creepy element, doesn't it?
and Dave
another layer.
Dave was into the tarot, and so I it was, look, Eric Oliver, what we got from you, Matt,
there's not much.
Yeah, there's not much about him. We don't know why he raped Stacy and hung himself. We just know that it happened. And so
you're just meant to believe that somehow Grendel, the essence, the force, whatever
right,
you call it, affected him in some
yeah. But I wanted to widen that backstory a little, I guess. And the tarot is kind of mystical claptrap that I don't really buy anyways, but it just sort of it fit with him and with the kind of space he would have to go to be that horrible to Stacy. Yeah.
Right.
I think mystical claptrap is the next story we should do.
The devil's claptrap.
Oh, yes. That'd be a good podcast name for this thing. I'll write that down. Oh man, amazing. Thank you all so much again.
Thank
This
you
is
guys.
like,
You bet. That was fun chatting, fellas.
yeah, for real.
I had a great time.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Can I ask one last question?
Teddy, yeah.
Yeah, Diana, did you write more comics, and that you just discarded, or?
No. Well, Tim and I did a Supergirl story, an 8-page
that's right.
Supergirl story. But really, that's it. Although I have to say, nowadays with the Mobius translations, and because you speak another language, or maybe even languages, you'll understand this. It's just not a simple one-to-one correspondence between languages. So when I'm translating, there are so many linguistic choices available to me, and especially with Mobius, who was on a different planet altogether.
So there's a certain co-authorship, is what you're saying. There's an aspect of co-authorship.
Yeah, I might not take it that far, but there is certainly some writing involved. Actually, there's a great deal of writing involved, because it's again, you're not translating the words, you're translating the intent. And so you have to best express that in English.
I have a funny story here. I don't know if I've ever told you. So for viewers that don't know, I'm married to Diana's middle sister, Barbara, and they grew up in Montreal, and all three of the sisters are bilingual, French and English. And I was a big fan of European comics. And so when we first hooked up, I was like, oh, this is fucking great. Like, we can lay in bed together and she could translate the French albums to me. We tried that once. We tried that once, because we're laying there and she reads a panel and she goes, oh yeah, okay. So what he's saying is, and I was like, this isn't working at all.
That's how Steve did my. I did a book for France, for a French publisher, and then Steve wanted to publish it in English. So I asked him, okay, but I wrote an English script as well. Do you want to see it? And he was like, no, 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 I'll translate it. So then we made this deal, this pact that that if it had a year or a name, he couldn't change it. But anything else was open. So then he should interpret what the images were telling. So he translated the first words.
The Red Diary? Is that the?
Yeah. This is a fantastic book. Yeah, I forgot about that, Teddy. That's a terrific. Finish what you're describing there.
Well, so he translated the first words that he was like, okay, this word in the very first caption, this word probably is this in English. This word is probably this in English, which made a few words that were missing. So he Google translated those and put them into these.
Oh my God.
Kind of words. So he came up with this sentence, and then he had to. Okay, this sentence doesn't make any sense. So it probably is this. And that was his start-off point for his story. So then we did this flip book where his story, it's the same art, and it's Steve's story based on what he thought was going on. And then when you flip it, then it's my story that he only saw afterwards.
And they're completely different. It's totally fascinating. It's really, really awesome. Yeah.
So cool.
Our new book is this, where it's a story that I have. And we've made this pact that it's 2 images per page, and then it's I'm writing the story, and because it's 2 images per page, there's a lot of time gap between, and then I'm doing the story that I have in my head, and I'm sending it to Steve, and then Steve, he will take once the whole book is complete, he will take all the pages and then redo all the, this is page 1, this is page 2, this is page 1.
What, shuffle the order of the pages?
Total shuffle the order and then write a story that will be looking like
wow. So cool. Oh man. Tim, do you have anything new that you're working on?
This is my Grendel crowd, boys.
Well, I just signed a contract for something. That's all I can say.
Awesome. That's great. And Diana, you're continuing work with the Mobius translations. Anything else new?
I just handed in the most recent one called Le Major, the Major, and it's Major Grubert. And I was confounded by this thing because, Mobius, like in the course of his lifetime, for instance, he started spelling his characters' names differently. Arzak became Harzak, and then Arzak with a K. And in the space of this 300-some text, there are basically 3 different characters. There's Major Grubert, and Grubert is no longer called Grubert, he's called Gruber without a T, but in French, those 2 words are pronounced the same, Gruber with a T, Gruber without a T. And there are 2 pilgrim-style characters who are constantly plaguing him, and the spelling of their names changes from page to page. Their appearances, their visual, within the same page, within 3 panels on the same page, characters flop, the 2 characters flop their appearances, and then they're replaced a little later on by another pair of characters called Raoul and Gaston, and it finally hit me with the R and the G, Raoul and Gaston, that I was looking at Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and that these characters all the way through the story are completely interchangeable, which is why their identities can fluctuate all the way through. It took Mobius 10 years to make this book. And the pages are dated in the lower right-hand corner. and chronology was not a particular concern, because you'll have a page dated 2009 at the beginning and a page dated 2001 towards the, I mean, it's a total shuffle there too.
Wow.
And he admits, sort of going into it in a prologue, that like, well, it was kind of a spontaneous thing for me. I just sort of drew what I felt like. I was anarchistic about this thing. And even in the context of the story, he asks himself, is this even a story? So as a translator, I got to tell you, this is like completely crazy, confounding, because it's like jazz improvisation, it's so
The creator, I gotta tell you, that was some good shit he was smoking.
Yeah, I mean, the original airtight
signing
guitar.
when Four Devils, One Hell was out, then me and him did a signing in a Copenhagen comic book store, and it was so intimidating to sit next to this.
Oh my God!
He was just sitting eating his nuts, little almond. And it was wonderful to see, because then when he was signing, he had this very thin little pen, and he just basically opened the book, and then this lovely, gentle, fragile line would just swoop across the page, and a wonderful drawing would appear. It was amazing.
Addition. Yep.
Yeah.
I had an experience like that sitting next to Miguel Angel Prado in Barcelona, and Vince Deegan was on my other side.
That's Frank Whiteley for everybody that doesn't know.
Is he one of those motherfuckers that doesn't pencil it out first? He just goes with the ink and and the books that he was inscribing, you open it up and it's just two white sheets of paper, and he would just draw some dragon or some, I don't know, with like a fountain pen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I followed.
Here's my and Tim knows this story. Too. Here's my version of that too. I was at a con in, I think, Atlanta, and I was sitting next to Jim Steranko, and he had we were kind of squeezed in. He had a huge display of a bunch of his cover paintings and shit. And he had a little boom box that he was playing 30s jazz on the whole time. And this is when I was writing Sandman Mystery Theater. So occasionally he would just step over to me and put his hand on my shoulder and whisper in my ear, Coleman Hawkins. And I'd go back to his table, Artie Shaw.
Awesome. Characters, man.
Yep.
Another lunatic, yeah.
I was gonna say, Diana, the Airtight Garage, the original story in itself is hard enough to follow and get a narrative going, let alone.
I mean, speaking of being experimental, with the Airtight Garage, he constructed that in 2-page sequences, and he would basically set up a story problem to resolve the next time. So when he was creating those 2-pagers, I mean, he would go totally far out and oh, great fun setting up a problem, but then come the next week and he'd sort of have to resolve that
figure
problem.
out a way out of it.
Yeah, but
he
yeah,
set
I mean,
a cliffhanger.
Yeah, the way out of that was just to kind of ignore a lot of stuff.
Right, yeah.
Story
panel,
was just not a big concern.
Right. First panel. Wow, good thing I got out of that. Now here we go.
Amazing. Great. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. We have to do this again.
Thanks for hosting us. Yep.
That's amazing. Thank you all again. The Devil
Thank you,
in
guys.
Detail. Vivat Grendel, and keep on Grendelin.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Good to see
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Great.
a lot of fun, guys.
Everybody.
Thank you so much. Tim, I only met you once at a show, but that Grendel photo that I put in the chat there,
Yeah.
I think me and my girlfriend, we both dressed as Grendels, and this was at a MegaCon. And I think we had also drank a lot that day.
Okay.
And I remember this. I hope this is what we actually did. We stationed ourselves in front of your booth, and we were kind of like working your line as like Grendels. We both had like forks, and I remember being like, we're Tim Sale's Grendel guard. And we were like standing there. I was like, great memory for me.